fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going around the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up top!
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go! Oh no!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
Welcome to the bumpy concrete of Sebring International Raceway for some SimSpeed coverage of the Porsche iRacing Cup. Got a race ahead of us this evening where all of our drivers are trying to score big points to make sure that they are in the top 30 come this weekend. They can make it to the Super Session and potentially find their way into the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup for the coming season. A lot of prizes, a lot of prestige, a lot of coverage on the line for that one. Maybe, fingers crossed, yet more Australian drivers can go and show their best on the world stage. That join the likes of names like Rogers, Dane Warren, Josh Anderson, and those who have competed in that very illustrious championship. And if you want to make it there, it has to start here. So I'm David Haynes, joined by Reese Gardner with Jay Kennedy on production here for SimSpeed. Reese, qualifying underway right now. This is a bumpy circuit. This Porsche Cup car is a bit of a handful at the best of times, a bit of a handful across some bumps as well, you would think.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the broadcast. My first time calling a Porsche race here on SimSpeed TV, so getting thrown into the deep end. I can't wait to see how these hopefuls do in this race and which of them can make it into the Super Session on the weekend. But of course, we are in qualifying, and yes, this track is bumpy. It started out as a World War II airfield. Actually, pilots trained using the B-17 Flying Fortress at this airbase. It's US Army Air Force Base Hicks, I believe. And now it is a racetrack, but they've kept all of those bumps from the runways and access roads. They actually try to maintain them around this circuit just to preserve its character. You can see Adam Willison there having a bit of trouble getting the power down out of Sunset Bend. Very difficult acceleration zone to start off his lap. We've already got times coming in, and it's Richardson Anderson setting a 2:03.115, fastest time so far, as Jack Boyd now comes across the line to put it on pole. Willison, I believe, going to second.
Indeed, there's a couple names out there for us to watch. They're going to include Jack Boyd, going to include Clint Shane Smith, and of course Richardson Anderson. Club Benelux has gone to second on the first of the two qualifying laps that our drivers are going to be able to have. Hey, it's old mate Hinsey. He's giving it a go in the Porsche Cup car 991.2 GT3 Cup. No ABS, no traction control. Difficult beast to drive around any track, especially around here. Sunset Bend presents a challenge, but he's going to finish up his first flying lap. Where's that going to put him? That's going to put him to fifth. He's got one more as he goes and attacks turn one. We talk about Sunset Bend. Well, that is the time of day here as well, with the sun getting very, very low in the sky. Maybe it's distracted Jacques Swainpole. That was quite a bit of tyre smoke there on the way into the final corner. Straightens it up, looking for one more lap. Lap time's just over 2 minutes. Means everyone crossing the line now is going to get to attack that second lap. A few drivers on the verge of maybe not being able to make that second lap. Jason Morris could be one of them.
Yeah, looks like it. Qualifying session is only 8 minutes in length, and Morris coming up to the end of his first lap, and he's just walled it there at Sunset Bend. Just locking the brakes, which are very easy to do in this Porsche Cup car. What about Andrew Smith then? He comes out of the final corner to end his first lap, and across the line, the time is going to be a 2:03.522. That puts him to P4, but looks like once again Matthias Berg is setting the pace up there, up the top of the field. Qualified on pole at Okayama a couple of weeks ago. Can Richardson Anderson improve on that time?
Well, we're going to see. He comes across that very big checkered flag timing line. And no, I see just the ever so slightest improvement for him, but in the end he gets bumped by Luke Bergens. Jack Boyd improves to try to clinch his pole. Clint Shane Smith No time on the board yet. Very narrow entry to Sunset Bend. Maybe hoping to rotate the car in the middle of the corner and then pick up all of that flat 6 Porsche power to the line. Last lap, I don't think counted, and it was a bit off speed as well. To Clint Shane Smith, that's going to put him 9th. And this is an interesting time of day for the Porsche iRacing Cup. A lot of Australian drivers, but also a good handful of some competitive European drivers as well. Matthias Burke from Scandinavia, Richardson Anderson from Benelux region, Miron Makeev in 7th from Central Eastern Europe as well. So this is some strong Australian drivers, but also they are being tested and compared against some of Europe's best as well.
Indeed they are, one of which being Matthias Burke there up at the front, but Jacques Swanpole comes across the line on his second lap, currently in 13th position. He improves to a 204.95, and that puts him up into position 12. So not a huge improvement, but an improvement nonetheless. And Marcus Kunscharsch there, I don't think we'll be able to get a time on the board. Neither will Andrew Smith here. Only 12 seconds left on the line, and it's going to take another 20 or so to get to the end of the lap from here.
I like the colours for Andrew Smith, throwing back to some very popular and very successful Australian Porsche GT3 Cup races. And maybe it's a sign of some things to come in the iRacing World Championship. We could see more Australians successful there. This is what it's going to be like for our starting grid here at Sebring in the Porsche iRacing Cup. Jack Boyd on the front row on pole position for a standing start. Matthias Burke back into 2nd. Luke Bergens in 3rd there from Australia, New Zealand. Richardson Anderson in 4th. Adam Willison in 5th. Andrew Smith in 6th. Miron Makeev in 7th. Michael Gello in 8th. Thomas Hinz in 9th. Clint Shane Smith in 10th.
Cohen Bevers is going to make it an 11th place start with Jacques Swanpole alongside him on the 6th row of the grid. Thomas Vivier starts alongside Adrian Duke, who was the last driver to set a time. And from there, it's Steve Hosey, Roy Johansson on row 8, Paul Heckel and Jason Morris on row 9, with James Darby and Marcus Kuntarich rounding out our 20-car field here today. Looking forward to this start, and it's going to be a standing start as usual. Those temperatures looking all right there. There's some good temperature in the track, and of course the sun is setting, so it's going to get a little bit better as time goes on.
Yep, exactly. Using the local time and local date. So it is 7th of November in session, wintertime in Florida, earlier kind of sunset. Our drivers starting to line up for what is going to be a 12-lap race. So around about 25 minutes. No pit stops expected or required lest you damage your car. So this is an out-and-out sprint to try and get enough points to put you in the top 30 around the world for this weekend, where you can then go show off, score the points that matter to potentially qualifying you into the World Championship. The winner of this race, we're looking at getting 173 points. Can it be Jack Boyd from the pole? Can it be Matthias Burke from the row behind him? A lot of revs, a lot of power to try and get these cars away, and that is a decent jump from everyone on the left-hand side. Jack Boyd and Luke Bergens away well. Matthias Burke is going to be under pressure around the outside of the first turn. Cold tyres, of course, on the start means they've got to be careful. Burke has managed to find a bit of speed on the outside there before he then runs wide across the dirt, and then towards the infield section of the lap we go.
Indeed, Bergen's shutting the door there on Matthias Burke, and some side-by-side running between Andrew Smith and Miron Makeev through this very tightening turn, leading through the big bend and into the hairpin. And this is going to be one of the big choke points of the lap. The drivers have to be very careful down here, especially on the cold brakes. So Boyd gets through there cleanly. What about Bergens and Burke? They go all right. A defensive line from Richardson Anderson as he tries defending from the pack behind. It's a big group of cars back from Andrew Smith and Miron Makeev now.
All of our front of the grid cleaning through the hairpin. That's one of the big braking zones of this circuit. Arrive at high speed, and it's long braking distances in these Porsche Cup cars with their rearward weight distribution, small front tyres, no ABS, and the pressure is thoroughly on here. 2nd and 3rd. Burke has warmed up those tyres, come on strong early compared to Bergens. is now his time to strike before maybe the tyres go off deeper in the race. Sometimes drivers go for different tyre pressures to start the race. They can be strong early, start to slide around a little bit later on. Here's some side-by-side and a little bit of contact. Regrettably, Michael Gerlow is going to find the barriers.
That he is, and that's probably going to warrant a modem simulation replay, because my goodness, very close quarters in that section between Gerlow and Cohen Bevers. It just looked like Bevers trying his best to stick it in there. Gerlow actually making the move, but you'll see as they come into this tight section where the track flicks to the right and then the left, Gerlow turns in, but Cohen Bevers was right there and just smacked off into the barriers.
Bit of understeer at turn in there as well. Really warm up those front tyres before the car will want to respond, and too wide through there did not work out. So in your top 5, Bergen's the only mover. Everyone else sort of in the position that they qualified. Bergen's getting ahead of Burke. It does seem like Jack Boyd has not been able to get away. Second and third squabbling. Appear to have picked up their pace a little bit, and you can see your top 3 in one shot there. Then, time to catch your breath before 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th are all battling. And Thomas Hinds come from 9th to 7th on the start here. He's well and truly having a peek at some of those in front as well. Jones is having Andrew Smith here, having a peek down the inside at the hairpin on Adam Willison, and that is a very clean, well-executed move. Andrew Smith up in the 5th.
Yeah, good stuff there from Andrew, but it looks like Adam Willison's going to try and get him back here as that top 3 battle continues up the front. Boyd got a very good start, and that's what's guaranteed him that gap to start off as we see the Smith-Willison battle calm down slightly. It's a slight bit of evasive action there from cars up ahead, but it really is the battle for second place now between Luke Bergens and Matthias Burke, and you see Burke with a great exit from Tower Turn. He is now right on the back of Luke Bergens coming into the Le Mans and Gendebien complex. Some crazy racing going on here up at the front of the field, and it looks like this is allowing Jack Boyd to get away once more.
Yep, and different lines here towards Ullman Straight. Seen Burke really drop back. I think he might have been too aggressive across some of the curves and picked up a slowdown penalty. All of that concrete there, it's tempting to exceed the painted track limits. And you can very easily jump across some of those curbs, and I think Burke might have done that. It's gone and cost him 3 seconds. It's gone and cost him a position as well. Richardson Anderson has been able to get through into 3rd for all the pace off the start that Burke had. He's now dropped back from a little mistake, and Andrew Smith, a little mistake into Sunset Bend. I think manages to gather it up on exit, but he got in there very, very hot. This is the point of the race where I think you start moving around that brake bias as well.
Oh, and Matthias Burke wasting no time getting that podium position back from Richardson Anderson right there into the first turn. And you can't see it, but I could. Richardson Anderson flashing his headlights at Matthias Burke after the move was completed. So quite an aggressive maneuver there. And oh my goodness, Andrew Smith way offline there, just clobbering the curbs through that slow section at the start of the lap. That's brought him right back into the clutches of Adam Willison and now Thomas Hinds too, who's right on the back of this pack. Miron McKeeve just hanging out there in 8th place, and the car at the back of this train is Willison. And whoa, there we go. Andrew Smith.
Didn't he really put the pressure on Smith, who now gets hooked and turned, and he cannot avoid the barrier. So a lot of pressure on Andrew Smith there. He's making some mistakes, and then on the exit of the hairpin, putting the power down, track sort of flicks left and right. This is what it looks like. Willison shows the nose, puts the pressure on Smith, who goes in too deep on the exit. What happens? That hooks the rear.
Yeah, and that is the contact there as they went through the right hand. Once the rear end gets light in this thing, there's not much saving you because they've got that flat 6 engine hanging out past the rear axle. So the weight transfer, incredibly important. Here's Clint Smith on board with him, chasing Cohen Bevers for 8th place. Very close fight between these two at the moment, and onto the Ullman Straight here. You're driving right into the sun. This is where the draft comes in, but looks like Bevers just got a slightly better exit than Smith did, so the draft not quite as in contention as it would be otherwise, but you see Smith is just able to ease up to the back of Cohen Bevers once they get into Sunset Bend, and that is wide from Cohen Bevers. just went a bit too hot into the first part of the corner, but he hooks it up really nicely on the exit. Seems like that's actually a reasonable line through Sunset Bend when you're in a battle. Clint Smith trying his best to distract Cohen Bevers.
I think it was still a mistake. He did lose a little bit of time from that. Was fortunate to hold on to the position, and now the pressure is still on throughout turn 1. And Clint Smith's going to want to get up past this position, because right behind and catching is Roy Johansson, who's already made 6 positions from deeper in the qualifying field. So again, this is what looked like was going on for Matthias Berg, is they need to keep advancing, otherwise someone behind might catch them and the leader might get away. Clint Smith looking down the inside for the hairpin, no overlap, and then throws it deep on the brakes where it appears he's been pretty strong. Clean move in the end, thoroughly to the apex, power down well. Shane Smith up into 8th.
Yeah, good stuff there from Clint, and that braking zone at the hairpin, actually one of the more difficult places on the track to throw a pass, because it feels really inconsistent in the braking area. You're right on the concrete, there's loads of bumps, and you can't quite tell where they are. You're approaching that braking zone differently every single lap, so it requires a lot of confidence in your car if you want to pull a move like that off. There's your top 3 there, with Matthias Berg obviously falling a long way back thanks to that slowdown on the previous lap. Richardson Anderson, though, keeping him honest, and there's the battle for 5th on back. Adam Willison now having to face off against Thomas Hinz directly. We'll see what he can do from here.
Winner of this race is going to get more than 170 championship points. That is definitely enough to put them into the top 30 to qualify for the Invitational Super Session. So for Jack Boyd, he's on path to pick up a handy result. 1.1 seconds ahead of Luke Bergens, and then you've got to look a little bit further back to Matthias Berg, who might have just gone a little too hard too early. He really is now at just before the halfway point of the race, relying on a mistake from either first or second, or them to get into a battle for him to be able to take the win. 3rd, 4th, 5th is not enough points to make that super session. I don't think you really, for this race, need and want to be the winner.
Yeah, that you do, and I think Matthias Berg still overdriving the car a little bit as we continue to focus on the battle between Willison and Hinz. I was taking a look at Matthias through the first part of the lap, and he was running wide in the first corner and just not quite hooking up the apexes like we know he can. That's an attempted move there from Thomas Hinz, just a little bit of a look there to try and unsettle Adam Willison. But once again, it's continuing to reel Miron McKeeve into this battle, which is soon going to become a 3-way fight for 5th place. A top 2, though, nothing troubling them at the moment. I'm looking through the field to see if there are other battles we can talk about. I have found one. Michael Giolo, who we saw with that huge contact with the barrier recently, he is now in a battle with Marcus Kuntarish here, and it's for 14th and 15th. Still a bit to fight for Michael, but it's going to be very difficult with that damage on his front end.
Yeah, if anything, you think that's going to hurt him in some of the long straights, like towards Sunset Bend, towards the hairpin. It appears that the car is reasonable apart from that. Of course, lap 1 contact's always going to put you right to the rear of the field. He hasn't given up on this one. Maybe just to try and stem his iRacing losses so he can continue making top splits in this championship, trying to be in it for the fight to pick up some good points. But further up the road, we ride on board and we look at some of these battles that have Willison, Hinz, and Miron McKeeve still riding along. Hinzy's trying to shape up Adam Willison. Willison was able to get Andrew Smith out of sorts and flustered. Now he himself is under pressure as Hinz goes down the inside of turn 1. Isn't going to get completely clear by the apex, but by the exit of the corner, he has to have his stamp and seal on 5th place.
Yeah, that he does. Nice move there from Hinzy. And it all starts from the exit of Sunset Bend. That fight we were looking at just before with Steve Hosey and Roy Johansson fighting with each other. Hosey, actually an interesting story here, as he's gotten a great exit down Big Bend. Johansson's going to go defensive. Hosey actually was one of the drivers to not set a time in qualifying. He got a spin and unfortunately invalidated his lap, and it looks like it's an easy move there. Roy Johansson just jumping off the brakes a bit early to let him go into the hairpin. I think he realizes at this point not much of a point fighting a move like that. Hosey is wanting to advance as far up as possible. Oh no, Marcus Kunterish has spun at the hairpin. I just noticed he went in there a bit too hard and the rear end swung around, so that's one position lost, and it looks like it might be two.
Well, modern simulation replay will tell us it's tough to pick exactly what brake bias you want. You want it rearwards to help the car turn through somewhere like Sunset Bend, but on the way in a long straight braking zone here to the hairpin, you want the brake bias a little further forwards, and you can see probably locked up the rears, carrying too much speed when he's gone to turn in. The front has gripped up, the rear hasn't. That's sent him around, and it's so easy to do at slow speeds in this car.
Yeah, very true. We were right on board with Miron Makiv chasing down Adam Willison and Thomas Hins. It looks like that gap is staying pretty stagnant down the Ullman Straight. There's so many turns around this place, and every single one of them has their own pitfalls, so very difficult to try and hook up a consistent lap around this place in racing conditions. You know, you tend to have a bit of a tough time with that sort of thing, but still, the fight continues between them. And it looks like Cohen Bevers and Steve Hosey are going to be the next battle that we might focus on, because Hosey with an aggressive entry into the first corner, and Cohen Bevers messing up the exit slightly. It looks like it might be move on here.
Exactly. We've seen Hosey's willing to get in there, have a battle, try to move his way up through the positions. This has been where we saw him pick one up earlier. Wide entry here to pick up the throttle early for Big Bend. Maybe a little too aggressive, got it a little out of sorts there, but he's going to follow along. Is he close enough to make a dive at the hairpin? This time, I wouldn't think so. He's keeping the pressure on, and when he does hook it up well through some of these slower corners, it does let him get a run to the big braking zones, and he did get good exit out of the hairpin. You can overtake at the end of this straight here if you're close enough.
Or does he do it? Yes, he does. Big look there from Steve Hosey, and Cohen Bevers running wide there to let him go. It looks like Hosey has managed to hook up that exit very nicely. We'll see if he can continue to defend from Cohen Bevers down the Ullman Straight, because that's one of the next zones they're coming to. Oh no, Hosey a little wide out of tower. That's going to give the position right back to Bevers, but they're coming up to that section of the circuit where that contact happened earlier. Going to go side by side through there, and they give each other plenty of room this time. Bevers sweeping around the outside of Hosey to retake the position. That was great.
Hosey needed to have a breathe out of the throttle to make the car turn on the narrow line there, of course.
There we go. That was Cohen Bevers messing up the entry into the corner. I think he actually got really crossed up on the exit. Now both of those cars are carrying damage.
Very noticeable on the front. Aerodynamic damage on the front of the car will hurt your straight line speed. For Steve Hosey there, who fully committed to the corner on the exit, made it of a tap. Roy Johansson still watching, probably actually glad that he let Steve Hosey go earlier, because now he has quite a clean car. Watching these two scrap, Hosey does just look like he's grabbed that position for the time being. He's been aggressive and maybe out of control at times as well. Now he's into the top 10, he's into 9th.
He is indeed, but those straights are going to be sections of the circuit where he'll be constantly looking over his shoulder. Doesn't look like the car's been harmed very much in the turns, but watch this. When they get up to near terminal velocity, you're going to see Cohen Bevers slide up to the back of Steve Hosey, especially down the Ullman Straight. Looks like he's hanging back a little bit coming into the hairpin. The straight is just not long enough to take advantage of that aerodynamic damage.
Yeah, potentially, and it was all straight on to the nose, not on any of the corners. The suspension, I'm sure, will be fine. It's just once you click up into 6th gear and the parachute effect starts to be noticeable past 200 kilometers an hour, it's a problem. But Bevers, that was wide of the apex there. Didn't get it stopped and turned how he would have wanted. Everyone, I think, struggling with rear grip for the most part. Now we're deeper into the race.
Yeah, and Steve Hosey there just getting out into the the gravel off the exit of Tower. Not going to help him too much, but he's eked out that gap with Bevers and Johansson thanks to Bevers' mistake. And yeah, as the race goes on, as there's more rubber laid down, as the remaining UV from the sun heats it up, can get quite slippery, and the rear of these cars becomes a lot harder to manage. We have seen evidence of that a few times yet in this race, but as the leaders now coming around to begin their 9th lap, Jack Boyd in a very dominant lead now over Luke Bergens. The gap at the line, 1.7 seconds, and it looks like it's staying there. So Boyd, unless he makes a mistake, isn't in much trouble here.
Yeah, in Boyd's shoes, I wouldn't push on too hard. I'd just keep that gap, try to bring this one home. Nothing good's going to happen from trying to make it a 3-second gap, trying to make it a 5-second gap. It's just got to keep driving sensibly, keeping a little bit of a gap. More problems for Steve Hosey, though. He's just going to drop 2, maybe 3 positions now.
Oh.
Is there more damage? Where has Steve Hosey gone off? Several times we were riding on board with him. The rears were shattering away, locked up, coming into all of the braking zones. Is that what's happened here? At turn 1, we pick up the replay.
He gets past the inside wall okay, but oh no, just got a bit of a slide going just past the apex, and with a slide like that, it's very difficult to recover when you're at those speeds. So Hosey just making his way back onto the circuit. Here we go. Just feels it coming around now, and oh man, that is one of the most frustrating incidents to have as a sim racer, right into the inside wall.
You see he gets to the apex and the traffic cone stuck in the fence, and as he starts to open up the throttle is when it all goes wrong for him. We were riding on board after the incident. Now the suspension, the steering, absolutely not straight for Stephen Hosey. He's limping around, but our car is probably 5-6 seconds off pace. You're going to need to get a certified Porsche technician to fix that one up, Steve Hosey, because he might try to get to the end from here. He might try to get back to pits for some repairs, but that is not a competitive race car, not an easy one to drive either.
No, especially if the wheel's at that angle down the straight. So hopefully Steve will be able to bring that one home, but just have a look as he makes his way through Le Mans and Gendebien onto the Ullman straight, and as he straightens out the wheel, well, he has to handle it with a few degrees to the right. And that is a very not pacey machine he has got under him.
No, I wouldn't be surprised if that one is heading for pit lane. It's a shame because he was charging up through the field. He had some very bold moves, but that was every moment we watched him, a very taily looking car, and eventually that did come and bite him. Where he was fighting Cohen Bevers, Roy Johansson, in his absence, they've picked it up for these final spots in 9th and 10th, and maybe the damage on the back of Cohen Bevers starting to go against him, because Johansson's picked up the pace and is now looking for 9th. Just confirm Hosey has brought that one back onto the lane. And the other battle is Miron Makeev and Adam Willison. Top 3 all holding station the last handful of laps for some of the deeper positions. Bevers, does it look like he's missing straight line speed compared to Roy Johansson, but he's willing to be braver on the brakes? That's how I'm reading this at the moment.
Yeah, with that rear-end contact, I mean, these cars don't have a huge diffuser, once again, thanks to the rear engine configuration. Well, yeah, or at all. But it's that airflow going under the car, and any damage to the rear bumper can affect that airflow. So remains to be seen if Cohen Bevers has really lost out on straight line speed. We'll find out for sure when we get to the Ullman straight.
I think key to it is the air comes over the roof, is attached to the rear windscreen, and as it sort of comes to the back of the car there, it's not going to attach very well. There's going to be a lot of drag around the rear of the car as it swirls a little more chaotically, especially behind the right rear wheel. We know that's a big tyre, and air always gets disturbed going over a wheel, so that's probably what causes it there, but he's doing what he can to hold off. Another position that's under threat is actually a final step on the podium. Burke's pace has dropped off big time, and Richardson Anderson has come at him in the last 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah, it has indeed. Matthias Berg set his fastest lap on lap 7. It was a 2:02.616. His last 3 laps since then, a 2:03.943 on lap 8, 2:03.038 on lap 9, and on that past lap, 2:03.361. So losing a few tenths on the last lap to Richardson Anderson. And speaking of Anderson, well, he has been setting some incredibly competitive times. He basically hasn't dipped out of the low 3s to high 2s this entire few lap run that he's got.
Precisely. Also the battle here, Bevers and Johansson, where Bevers still looks to be struggling, trying to nurse that car home with about 1.5 to 2 laps to go for these guys. Most of the damage on the right-hand side at the rear, as you can see. Seems to still be moderately okay in the corners, but it's the end of the long straights when we check in here, and it seems like the draft in combination helps Johansson, and they're not far behind them. Thomas Vivior is under pressure from Michael Gerlo, who we know went around, hit the barriers early, and still just been slowly catching some other cars, picking them off one by one. Huge what could have been then for the number 9 car here, seeing as with that damage he's still making forward progress. Could have been a top 5, I think, tonight, so that's why he was not happy with that lap 1 contact.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think Michael's going to be thinking a lot about the what might have beens as the final lap has begun for our leader, Jack Boyd. It was a good exit for Michael Gyurlov, but a better exit for Thomas Vivior. He's able to maintain that momentum once again, thanks to Gyurlov's damage. For Johansson and Bevers, though, that is the move done there. He has got it at Sunset Bend and secured it. Good time to do it as the white flag flies, but that battle for third still going on. This is still in contention between Burke and Anderson.
Yep, you can check the timing tower there. Boyd leading 2.4 seconds ahead of Bergens, who then has a handy margin to these two here. Burke still under just a bit of pressure from Richardson Anderson. There's been contact between Gerlov and Thomas Vevior. But that's not going to affect the battle for third place. It sent Vevior off, and Gerlo is very sorry about it, it would appear. Johansson, yep, Gerlo letting him go, redressing that position. But it's cost both of them because some other cars have come through. On the final lap, though, Anderson, his car has been more of a stayer than a sprinter. Burke, so quick in the opening laps, we often see, and then maybe more aggressive settings, see him struggle to nurse the tyres in the heat at the end of the race. Through Tower, though, he has a good line. Only hope left for Anderson has to be at Sunset Bend, surely, if he can force a mistake, if he can keep the pressure on. Final lap of Porsche iRacing Cup, broadcast on SimSpeed TV. These drivers looking to get their points to get into the Super Session to become potentially World Championship competitors. Boyd just needs to bring it home cleanly. Bergens isn't going to be able to catch him. Burke and Anderson are battling over third. And for the final corner, Jack Boyd takes it cleanly. A neat line to pick up the power in his HM Engineering Porsche to the checkered flag. He flashes the headlights because that is 173 points for him. Almost guarantees him into the Super Session. Bergens second. Burke just holds on for third because Richardson Anderson couldn't put enough pressure on at Sunset Bend. Reese, some other battles still on the final lap as well.
Yes, indeed. And Bevers and Johansson still together here coming through Sunset Bend, but it looks like Cohen Bevers has managed to take it back there from Johansson, and he is going to capture that 10th place right back from Mr. Johansson. It's actually going to be for 9th between them. My apologies, as Vevior and Gyurlov continue their battle. It was briefly marred by contact, but at the end, it is Thomas who comes across the line in front.
Yeah, the contact there costing Gerlov some positions to Andrew Smith, Jacques Svainpool, and also not letting him get past Thomas Vevior. So this is the results from Sebring. Jack Boyd is the winner, takes a handful of points. That's why he's here. Luke Bergens for second, podium completed by Matthias Burke. Then Richardson Anderson right behind in fourth. Thomas Hinz well, some good moves to get into 5th, but then might have been a bit of a quiet one from there. Adam Willison in 6th. Miron Makev couldn't pass him from 7th. Clint Smith in 8th. Cohen Bevers 9th. We saw battling back and forth with Roy Johansson, who ends up in 10th.
Andrew Smith started in 6th, but unfortunately a couple of incidents along the way put paid to that. He comes home in 11th, and Jacques Swanpole finishes where he started in 12th place. Thomas Vevior, it's the same for him, 13th. Michael Gyolov, well, it could have been an excellent race for him, a potential top 5, but getting cleaned up through the fast left-handers and then contact with Vevior later on put paid to that. Marcus Kuntarish comes home in 15th with Adrian Duke and James Darby behind him. Jason Morris, Steve Hosey, and Paul Heckel rounding out your field. Looks like Hosey, our sole retirement from this one, with Heckel not taking to the grid.
Exactly, some tales of woe there, but our podium picking up points as they have to do to be able to make it into the Invitational Super Session on the road to the Porsche World Championship. Good omens for HM Engineering and Jack Boyd from Sebring in the Porsche iRacing Cup. It was run, it was won, and next week they head to Spa. We'll be broadcasting the same time split once again here on SimSpeed TV, so thank you for tuning in. Congratulations go to Jack Boyd, Luke Bergens, and Matthias Burke, our podium. I've been David Haynes. It's been Reese Gardner alongside me, and a busy day for our producer, Jay Kennedy. We will see you at Spa next week on SimSpeed TV. Good night.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction. He's going the outside of both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my God.
Oh.
Big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are going to want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go. Oh, no. That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh, my God.
God, what?